And I'm now setting my timer so I have some sense of time, which notoriously speakers lose track of. And hopefully you will too. So, talking head. Everybody loves talking heads. Gestalt therapists love talking heads. Gestalt therapists love being talked to, right? It's the great horror of lectures, right? At least it is in New York. I once gave a presentation in New York, and people rolled their eyes as soon as I walked in the room. People roll their eyes. Now, I'm going to watch you.
We're watching you too.
Yeah, but I'm looking for rolled eyes. And I'm looking for interest. I'm looking for disinterest. I feel good and excited. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to try to convey to you some of my excitement about this topic. I want to experience your interest. I want to notice your boredom. I want to hear your questions. I want to give. I want to receive. I want to meet you. I want to feel met. This happens through our expressions. Right now, I sense you. I'm kinesthetically picking you up. Right now, we're chatterboxes talking to each other in languages that transcend the languages of our birth, the languages we're taught. We're hearing with all of our senses. We're picking up. This can't be otherwise. Talking heads? A head is part of the body. My voice will resonate. It is now. In every note that I'm capable of speaking. In every tone. So if you see me reading, and you will, I hope my voice isn't flat. And I'll look up and hopefully see the flatness in your eyes. And I will hopefully adjust. And what I need from you is what I hope I'm giving to you, response. Because this is also what we can't help but happen here. Because what is this? We're Gestalt therapists. We know about the contact boundary. We know about it, and we are of it. We're experiencing individually and together. We're creating. I'm participating in it, and you are. Figures are emerging, various figures in various ways. Contacting is happening, various ways, various shapes and forms, various qualities. So parallel lines cross. Well, you know that parallel lines don't cross. That's the definition of parallel. So I was making a joke, a geometric joke, a Euclidean joke. Somebody told me that, they do cross in non-Euclidean space. And that didn't throw me, but taught me something and sent me to Wikipedia. Then I saw that that's imaginary space. So, parallel lines cross. And we're all clinical phenomenologists. All Gestalt therapists are clinical phenomenologists, whether you know it or not. And I'm going to show you how this is so. Or you're going to see, this isn't so. Die Rose ist ohne Warum. Sie blüht, weil sie blüht. The rose is without why. It blossoms because it blossoms. That's Angelus Silesius, 17th century, 1657. Now, I often begin presentations with this quote because I often lean heavily in a theory direction with that quote. Why? Consider it for a moment. Die Rose ist ohne Warum. Sie blüht, weil sie blüht. The rose is without why. It blossoms because it blossoms. What this says to me is something simple. Living is beyond understanding. Experience is more than words, and certainly beyond our attempts to describe or account for it. Experience is our authority. Our words chase experience, but never fully catch it. Catch hold of it. Hold it. We grab hold of our words and ideas, but then experience is our authority and shows us that there is more that we haven't grasped. We're always failing and always trying again. When people say, it's just words, I say it's always as much as words. Because we always have to have more to say. Because words always fail. Always. Because experience is our teacher. And experience is beyond words. We have to watch out for words of stone. They cover up the fire of experiencing. They cover up the vitality of experiencing. Paul Goodman warned about this in both his doctoral thesis, Speaking in Language, and in his chapter in the book, Pearl, Sefferline, and Goodman. What the hell is the title of that book? Because he always called it Pearl, Sefferline, and Goodman. Verbal Excitement and Growth in the Human Personality. A pathetic title, actually. But at any rate, it's verbalization in poetry. Because verbalization is what we do when we speak to each other in the common way of hello, how are you? And poetry is how we try to catch experience. Those are words of fire. But it never grabs it entirely. That's what Silesius was saying. But the rose speaks it. Theories are gestures towards understanding. But even though I'm leaning on it, they never ought to cover over enchantment with the world. They never ought to cover over enchantment with the world. Somebody I'm going to talk about soon, Husserl, Edmund Husserl, one of the big phenomenologists. A good deal of his work was to tell us and show us how to strip away mere theory, to try to locate that which theory points to. He said this about science, he said about this in mathematics, he said this about everything. What is the actual basis, the founding basis that everything else points to, tries to grab hold of? And all this other stuff is absolutely important. We can't live without science. We can't live without any of that stuff. But nevertheless, there is an enchanting world that we all live in our actuality of life. And I am going to spend some time about that. But something else is as clear to me as the nose in front of my face, which actually isn't clear to me unless I go like that. How many here speak English as your native tongue? How many of you here don't? So some of you, many of you, maybe have learned Gestalt therapy in English, maybe not. You're certainly talking about it here. So you're doing a kind of translation back into a way of your understanding it. You probably, if you've read Gestalt therapy in other texts in other languages, have other ways of understanding Gestalt therapy. Now, I've taught in other countries, and I've encountered different ways of understanding these basic concepts. I've learned from the ways Gestalt therapy has been translated into French and German and Italian. So I'm encouraging you to trust the translations, trust your understanding of Gestalt therapy in your own language, and go back and forth between how you understand it as it's taught to you in English and how you understand it in your own language, and go back and forth. And as far as I'm concerned, bring forward to me, to us in the English language community, what you understand in your own language communities. Because it doesn't belong to any one of us. Experience is our teacher, not the closed loop of any language community. This is what words of fire are. So in this lecture, so how, are you bored yet? I'm not, I'm excited. I'm going to take you on an excursion through some Gestalt therapy and some phenomenology. And I've been spending a lot of time on this, so you're going to get just a sliver. And hopefully you'll get another sliver when I do the thing on Sunday. And I'll hint at some of that. And I think some of this might be dense. I don't know how familiar you are with phenomenology. And I'll keep my eye on, again, on unfocused eyes and tongues sort of dropping out of your mouths to see how we're doing. Because I know that all of us have already learned that Gestalt therapy is a phenomenological psychotherapy, and we've learned kind of some basic principles of Gestalt therapy which parallel already phenomenology. I'm going to give different twists. However we may frame it, we know that Gestalt therapy is about novelty, contacting, growth, and enabling a person's maximum capability to make creative choices within given situations. I could go on for pages. You could go on for pages. You can disagree with each other, and you will. I take this further. We know that contacting is about novelty, excitement, and growth, from satisfaction of commonplace living to the fireworks of ecstasy when we're in our best moments. And at its heart, psychotherapeutic contact is the transformative magic of insight at our best moments, at our best clinical moments. Gestalt therapy asks us to reopen our eyes, ears, and hearts, and to rediscover what might have been lost, and to recover what we might not have known was gone. What we might not have known was gone. Now, phenomenology is a philosophical method, and more, with many different approaches. And I'll get into some of this later. But I distill it for this purpose. Phenomenology looks beneath the apparent surfaces of everyday experience to find what was hidden and uncovers the lost wonders of experience. Now, that's not usually how people get what phenomenology is. But that actually is what is a common thread within phenomenology. So both Gestalt therapy and phenomenology have this in common. Both are concerned with getting in touch with otherwise unnoticed aspects of experience. And we do this in very similar and very different ways. We're not a philosophy. We are oriented psychologically. Gestalt therapy and phenomenological philosophy can be understood not only as parallel perspectives on human beings, but as parallel lines that cross. And I'm going to reflect on this and offer some new ways to consider them. Oh God, I thought I was going to be shorter. Okay. I will look at this in terms of our theory and our practice, and I will tighten our widest lens through a patchwork version of Husserl's contributions. Now, Husserl. Are you familiar with Husserl? He developed phenomenology after Brentano, and he developed a lot of it. And he was the source out of which the phenomenological movement flowed everywhere, every continent. And there is no single Husserl. No. So anybody who tells you that this is what Husserl meant is wrong. I'm wrong. Anybody tells me I'm wrong is wrong. It's just this the given. He published 4 volumes. 40 volumes were unpublished. The unpublished volumes have been studied since his death. There's a Husserl industry in which people are agreeing and disagreeing with one another. There are Husserls. So know that. And I don't pretend that this is a Husserl. So from his phenomenology, I'm going to introduce you, we're going to meet his famous epoché, or bracketing, which is familiar in Gestalt therapy, the reduction, the attitude, intentionality, and the life world. I'm going to introduce something I'm going to call the Gestalt epoché, and our version of the reduction. And this may be the most technical part of my lecture. I'm going to introduce these tools and use them for some of our ordinary ways of thinking, and maybe practicing Gestalt therapy, because our theory is not theory, it's a theory practice, and it better be. I see some of the ways we think about our theory, I believe, cloud over experience and make it difficult to see what ought to be as clear as the faces that are appearing to me right now. Those are organism, environment, field, contacting, and even aggression. I may not get to all of them. So let me show you how closely Gestalt therapy and some of Husserl's phenomenology are, how they are parallel. And maybe you can decide for yourself how distant the parallel lines are. So would you do something right now? Take a breath. Look at your watches. Is any of you surprised at the time? Did it feel this long or this short? Then look out the window, look around. Did any sense of how you are present here change? I mean, we've known Gestalt therapy as the so-called therapy of the here and now. Misunderstood, understood, overused, underused. The actual first experiment in Gestalt therapy, the Pearls, Hefferlein, Goodman book, probably the Pearls, Hefferlein part, said, the very first, try for a few minutes to make a sentence stating, begin each sentence with the words now and at this moment, here and now. Now, what was the big deal about this? And probably nothing unless you think again. We say this as a way to initiate a way of being open to experience, free of aboutisms, should-isms, and other opinions of what is. And Pearls made a bigger deal about this later. It's an important part of a lot of the way he explained Gestalt therapy. So when we consider this clinically in a session, we can look at this as a new outlook or attitude on experience, changed from its original perspective. Now that's important. An attitude is a way in which we organize what we see and understand, the way we look. This attitude is now clear to preconceptions, or at least with those preconceptions that are identified. Pearls flips from an everyday attitude to a different one, in which a person now views experiences, the immediate world, differently. The room that was defined by 4 walls, a ceiling and a floor, becomes as if a new place. A person is no longer at the street address, and no longer in an hour measured by that clock. This is the now of the Gestalt therapy attitude. It's an experiential now. It's a phenomenal now. It is a process in time, not of time, not the now of colloquial language. I'm going to meet you now. This here is what is presented in a flowing now, an extended now, transformed into a stream of experience. The office is no longer a Cartesian box. The therapy hour no longer time, listen to this, ticked off in minutes by a clock. Now, that's an example from Heidegger. You know, right? Now he'd say appearing in the face of a digital clock. Now, this here is a situation of therapy, which has its own sounds, light, and sense. Gestalt therapy begins simply as the gesture of taking a moment to catch our breath. A person crosses from one plane to another, from everyday attitude to that special orientation of the therapy session, which I'm calling the Gestalt attitude. And then in that Gestalt attitude or perspective, a person and the therapist meet at the contact boundary with awareness, and a phenomenal territory. The ordinary and the commonplace become a field of possibilities and potentialities in the process of contacting. We're open to the disclosure, release, and the disinhibition of our clinical phenomenology. And this is the result of a simple shift that we're commonly referred to as bracketing. Not so much a result, but this is the bracketing, the Gestalt epoche, allows for the possibility of this. It can't be just the result. Something else has to happen, obviously. The Gestalt epoche, the Gestalt attitude, and I will explain our version of the Gestalt reduction, the Gestalt, what, did I do that? No, I did that. The Gestalt induction. So let me stress, the commonplace notions are set aside, parenthesized, bracketed, uprooted. Moving, not excluded, but importantly engaged within the Gestalt attitude. Now it's different from Husserl. Let me get to him. Now his epoche begins with how human beings naturally live. Like Pearls, he also starts with what he calls the world, or natural world. The epoche is an act that initiates the reduction of this, what he calls the natural attitude, to what he calls the phenomenological attitude. That's important to him. I'm quoting, the entire world posited in the natural attitude, the world actually found from the outset in experience, for him, counts for us as nothing. It is to be bracketed. And what he means, of course, by bracketed is put over here, just not paid attention to. Right? It's not gone, just not paid attention to at all. Not relevant. The beliefs and commonplace everyday assumptions are put out of action. The natural attitude has been cleansed. That's his word. Theories and assumptions, beliefs about the world are stricken. His word again. Then he deploys what he calls the reduction. And what is that? He, the phenomenologist now, steps back, turns away from experience, and now with the eyes of a phenomenologist, returns to what was the natural attitude. Now it's cleansed of all those everyday things, absolutely scrubbed clean. With a new perspective, he returns to it. Reduction is from the Latin, pardon my Latin, reducere, to return. He returns his focus to this cleansed natural attitude. And why? Because he's looking for the ideal forms of experience. Now, is this Gestalt therapy? Well, as we Americans say, close but no cigar. Now, we Gestalt therapists are different. How you doing? Yeah. It means, yeah, good. A cigar is, hey, right, let me give you a cigar. You got it. You know, you won. right? It's like, oh yeah, that's right, here. You've won the prize. Right on target. In other words, yeah, it's close enough. Oh, you're good at translating these things, Bob. You did it yesterday. Well,
right, but no cigar.
Okay, you know what? I'll drop it. Close enough. Close but no cigar. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So we Gestalt therapists are different. We're psychotherapists. So what does that mean? We don't cleanse the natural attitude. In the Gestalt approach, what do? We include, within our new way of seeing, the everyday. We don't reduce. We don't leave and come back to what has been now cleansed. We care about what has been cleansed. We care about the everyday world of a person. We care about how the person lives. The person brings into the therapy session concerns. The person brings into the therapy session all of the fixed gestalts. These are of interest to us. We don't bracket them. A person brings into the therapy session some of the everyday meanings, which are now different, because they can now be looked at through the Gestalt attitude. We use something else. We use something that I'll call the Gestalt induction, from the root indicere, to lead in. In contacting is a way to lead into, to open up, disclose the structure of experiencing. So in a way, our Gestalt attitude is superimposed on top of the everyday attitude. They coexist. Because they coexist, we're able to work with both simultaneously for the purposes of uncovering what hasn't been aware, and bring to awareness, bring to consciousness, and that's controversial, so that a person can have integration. So the fixed Gestalt can release. The fixity can release. We bracket but don't ignore. Everyday life is in the therapy room. What's not in the therapy room is the capacity to not pay attention to these things. We don't pay attention, and that's the Gestalt. We pay attention, and that's the Gestalt attitude. It's interwoven with the embodied experience of any person. These are the effects of the fixed Gestalt. Okay. Jumping ahead, because I see my hope to finish early was a hope. So the Gestalt induction is a process that leads to the structure of experience. In the commonplace we find enchantment, we find amazement, we cherish the novel. In the integrating insights of therapeutic contacting, that's the gold ring of our clinical work. And gold ring is what, in a carousel, people reach out and try to grab a gold ring on the side, and that's supposed to be what's good about riding a carousel. I have never ridden a carousel. All I've done is seen it, but that's supposed to be a good thing. I think that's probably multicultural. And in this way, Gestalt therapy is a clinical phenomenology. It's a clinical phenomenological therapy of the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary. Now, I have a clinical case. Would you like to hear it? I should have taken this out, but I didn't. And even worse, I didn't bring it, but I have it. John. I worked with John for about 5 years. And this is just an example of one of many cases where I work phenomenologically. He came in, John's complaint was that that he was subject to impulsive and in sexuality. He was a compulsive sex. He was compulsively sexual. Whenever he was anxious, he found himself going out and having sex. He came in this session feeling really good. Oh, one more piece of his history. He grew up in a family in which he was the good child, and his brother was a schizophrenic child. He was the one who was always assigned the job of taking care of his brother. He came in very happy, bouncing along, and said, Dan, I have a pain in my leg. I don't know what that is, but otherwise I'm feeling pretty good. We looked at each other, and I said, would you like to take a look at that? So think about that as the shift from the everyday attitude to a Gestalt attitude. He said, yeah, sure. I said, will you let's gather, we'll do it together. Sit down, gather in our seats, take a breath. Can you bring your attention to that pain? Just let your attention kind of float to where that pain is. Just focus on it, see what happens. And he took a breath and focused on it. And I said, what do you notice now? And he said, it really hurts. It feels sharper and sharper. And I began to notice it with him, and I felt my posture, and I felt myself kind of feeling drawn to him. And I said, can you continue to describe what you're feeling? And he said, yeah. For some reason, I'm kind of feeling, I don't know why, but I'm feeling sad. And for some, again, what emerged for me was a sense of brother. I kind of imagined his brother. I didn't know what that was about. And I said, John, does your sadness, can it bring you anywhere? And he took a breath and he thought. I said, would you be willing to close your eyes? And he closed his eyes. Let me call that Gestalt induction, because I'm inviting him to go into the structure with me, a structure of that experience. He took a breath and he said, you know, sometimes I'm sad about my brother. Sometimes I'm sad. And he started to stream. I said, can you stay with that? Can you stay with that? And the stream began to weep a little. And he said, that wasn't fair, what happened to him. It wasn't fair. And it was quiet, spent a few, whatever moments we spent. Then he breathed again. And I took a breath just now. And then he said, Dan, my leg doesn't hurt anymore. I said, well, what's it like for you now? He said, you know, I just feel sorry for the way things have been. And that's just a little vignette. You know, I compressed it, of course, and I idealized it for the example. It's not a transcript. But I offer it to you as kind of an example of a phenomenological step-by-step, and as an example of the epoche to the induction, and possibly a sense of what was uncovered, disclosed, made aware, not made aware, but became aware, and possibly integrated. We don't know whether it was, of course, and it was one time. We'll never do it, or maybe it will, but one time is not likely to. That was just an example of a session. So I've detailed parallels between Husserl and Gestalt therapy. Now comes what I think is my fun part. I'm checking in. Hello? Epoche? Induction? Hoping? This is the fun part for me, because when I went over it before, I started chuckling. Now the crossing of parallel lines. And I renamed it colliding. And I took a a grandiose image from physics as a particle accelerator. And what does a particle accelerator do? When you collide, subatomic particles pop out. Things that you haven't seen before come out. Things that were there. I got so excited. Get over yourself, Dan. Things that weren't there become clear. You discover something, and you get a Nobel Prize. And boy, is this so less important. And these things were right before our eyes. And where were they? Where are they? They're in experience. They're in experience that possibly, I offer, is covered over by our usual way of talking about it, by our every way of talking about our work as Gestalt therapists. We take our theory too seriously. Ha. Okay, that was because of my reputation.
Tell them what your reputation is.
I guess it's not that. Being pretentious. That I'm locked into theory, but and that I'm doctrinaire. Our theory sometimes is words of stone, and I've been questioning it. I've been questioning awareness. I've been introducing consciousness, God forbid. I've been questioning environment. I'm questioning aggression. And I've all done this using what I think, my enemies. But I think is from the phenomenological perspective. And I know who they are. Now here I'm going to look at environment and aggression and add some words from phenomenology. I'm going to add, life world, and use intentionality somewhat differently. And I'm going to be using the Gestalt epoche, induction, and attitude. And I'm going to add some clinical implications, even though I left those things in the room, and I can tell you why I did, but uninteresting. Now, the theory part of our text, now I say our text, right? This is my doctrinaire, of Pearl, Sefferland, and Goodman, says audaciously, how could they ever say this, right? Experience occurs at the boundary of the organism and environment. I mean, really? Get over yourselves. The world of philosophy has been trying to figure that one out, and they answer it in one sentence? Okay. Okay, so they wrote it quickly. So let's take this down to the nitty-gritty, or at least part of it. When we ask a person in therapy to pay attention to what presents to us in the moment, our here and our now, we're orienting ourselves to experience emerging at the contact boundary of the organism-environment field. Okay, again, principle. We can cross ourselves. A person's sense of their embodied here, in this room, and so on. This is basic Gestalt therapy. Now let's take a look at it. Let's use the Gestalt epoche and induction. So, this is something I'm going to ask you to do. If you want, if you're willing, you can close your eyes or look down. See if you can get a sense of yourself in this chair, how you're breathing. Get a sense of the temperature in the room, the air. Does it move? Get a sense of the light. The sounds. Take a moment now and notice what is your place, your time, your here, your now. Whatever it is, of course, there's no right, this is yours. Can you get a sense of yourself in this room? This room? Now, where are you? Can you feel your feet on the floor? What about the carpet? Can you feel the building under your feet? What about the earth? Does this earth spread out? What's the landscape that connects you to this earth? What comes up for you? What's it like for you to be there? How are you oriented in this place? And if you can extend it, extend this location, can you find home? Where is it? Is it close? Is it far? And what's it like for you to be there? Is there a neighborhood? Are there smells? Are there people? Now, can you come back here? And bring yourself back right here? Can you get I'm going fast, sorry. Could you get a sense of others here? Populate this room. And when you're ready, come back and open your eyes. Now, I've led you on a brief, insufficient experiential journey. And as we usually say, that experience emerges at the contact boundary of your organism and environment field. It included some imagination, some might say some abstractions. But I asked you what it was like for you. I included some experience, and I believe there were experiences there. There was contacting there, even though I pushed you through it. Now consider the notion of organism-environment field. What happens when I apply the Gestalt epoché, an induction to the experience you just had? What about the word environment? I don't know what it is in other languages, but I'm working from English. Apply the word environment. Now, the epoché, and separate the everyday meaning from our actual experience, and bring it closer to the experience in that experiment. To me, environment distances me from an experience like that. It takes me to abstractions about the planet, concern for the environment, to ecology. It takes me to oxygen, to recycling. These are important things. I don't want to drop that. But does it capture the experiential topography of the world that I led you on? Of your home and how you felt considering it? That populated world, does that mean, is that covered by environment? And look around and wonder, so all you see and feel and wonder, is that captured by that word, environment? Does that capture the actuality of life? Where life you're living is lived? Is it concretely where you live? Experientially where you live? Or is it abstractly at arm's distance? Is that where human beings make love, weep, hope, dream, make art? Where we are lifeful, as somebody said in the group yesterday? Lifeful? A translation from Danish to English. This world of yours that when you bracketed the everyday and paid attention to what you were able to actually experience, is this the environment? Well, maybe it does. If it does for you, that's fine. And that's fine. But give me some room to continue this. Let me say no and tell you why I think this and why my answer is important for us as Gestalt therapists. Clinical phenomenologists, humanists, and existentially oriented clinicians. Let me just look around. And perhaps you know what I'm getting at. We are organisms living in the environment, needing the environment, needing air, needing oxygen, needing food. We're concerned with the environment. We're engaged with the environment. But we're also human beings in communities, sharing histories, cultures, memories, dreams, hopes, and plans for the future. We're with other people and other persons. As I say, we're loved and loved, touched and touched, hate and hated. We're warmed by the sun and also weep at the beauty of the sunset. We're born into families and live in societies. We enchant and are enchanted by the world of which we are a part. These are all experiences. These are not abstractions. My words cannot capture it, but you know what I'm talking about. These are grounded in our felt sense of our situations, and they're concretely and fully entwined and contacted. They're grounded in our felt sense of our situations, and they are concretely and fully entwined in contacting. Insofar as Gestalt therapy has been concerned, all of these are intrinsic of functions of the organism-environment field. Gestalt epoche, Gestalt induction. We strip away our ordinary understanding of our commonplace and universally taught concept of environment, and return to what is inside, beneath, and within the experience itself, insofar as we're able to grab hold of it. I think something is missing in these terms that overlook some of the most important qualities of our being in the world. Phenomenological term. So what then is this word? What is it in our terms of this field, if it is not the organism-environment field? What is this word? I reach into phenomenology, I reach into German philosophy, and take the word Lebenswelt, the life world, the world of life. Now I return to Husserl. It's the natural world, I'm quoting, it's the natural world. We are living, functioning subjects together in an open circle of other functioning subjects. It's lived experience of the surrounding world, and that holds also for what is seen and thought. The life world is the actuality of life, the world in which we are already living. As he says, it is pre-given and given. That means it was there, we're born into it, and we take it up. Right, under my feet. And we take it up in pre or for contacting, because it's the context. It's what nourishes us. Otherwise, Husserl's student, Aaron Gurvich, extensively discussed life world, he said, is the soil which all human activities, productions, creations take place. The world of common experience, our cultural world. And if you care to look at relationality, you don't have to go much further than here, because this is the populated world that environment doesn't give us. It implies it's there. It's there in most of our literature covered by environment, but is it there? Life world consists of history, culture, society, and so on. It's all the concrete, natural things. It is the we world, stretching backwards in time toward shared culture and history, and laterally and forward. It's hopes, dreams of the future. It's the sphere of humanness. It's a world of meaning in life. I'll get to how this works clinically in a moment. The life world is as hard and firm as the floor under your feet and a sense of where you are. It cannot be bracketed. And it's obvious why. Because we are inevitably the bracketers of the lived world within which we bracket. Can we bracket the bracketer? Huh? So there are clinical implications here, which are another theme that I'm not going to write. Jumping. Okay, I'll skip that very lyrical passage and keep it for myself to move along. Okay, example. George was a delightful man. And there I go, broadcasting a kind of countertransference thing. But that's another theme. He was I guess he was in his early 60s. He was a singer, sang in the chorus of the Metropolitan Opera. One of his issues was that he was afraid of everything. He was a wonderful bass baritone, but he could never sing the high notes. Every time a high note was approaching, he got anxious and held back. He always wanted love, but could never connect with anyone. He said, love. He'd come into a session, no matter what when the temperature was, let's say, I don't know how to do it in Celsius, but slightly chilly, he'd have a hat on with flaps down covering his ear, a jacket would zip it up. If it was cloudy, he'd carry an umbrella. And he also had a problem with his eyes. And we talked for a while, and he always would refer to Mama won't let this, Mama won't let that. And one moment when we were exploring something, and I'm assuming that we've already passed into the Gestalt Therapy attitude. And I noticed something in his voice when he said "Mama." I said, George, I heard a kind of catch in your voice. What did you hear? He said, yeah. I said, could you go say that again? And he noticed the catch again on the word "Mama." I said, what can you pay attention to that again, and what's that like for you? He said, yeah. When I said "Mama" that time, I remember how she was. I mean, she always double locked the door. And that, I felt a little fear. I never knew what that was to be frightened of. Do you recognize that fear? It's kind of like, I'm kind of frightened too. I said, well, can you tell me more about what it was like to be living in a home with a frightened mother? And he said, oh, she was terrible. I mean, she would tell me to always dress carefully, and not to run, be careful when you walked. And I said, well, tell me more. She said, well, she used to tell me stories. And she said, well, what kind of stories did you tell me? Well, it turned out that she was a refugee from Poland in the early teens. She was afraid of anti-Semites. And she and her family were very careful. And they had to be, and they were frightened. And and he recognized that, that was her fear. I said, well, maybe I'm living, I'm compressing. Maybe I'm still living in her world. And I said, well, it might be interesting for you to notice if there's something frightening in the world you're living in, or whether it's kind of an echo of her world. and go back and forth. He said, maybe. Now, for this purpose, life world. Background, unaware background, is the life world in which he's also a citizen. It's a life world that contained his mother and fear. When he became more aware of this specific affect, or as they say in some contemporary Gestalt therapy, the atmosphere of this life world, he began to be able to differentiate what it was like for him to be a citizen in this world, and to be clearer about how he could be alive in this world too. Now, I'll give you another quick example, very quick example. I work with people for whom English is not their first language. It happened a few times. I remember one German guy, and his complaint was that he felt empty, and he didn't like his job, and that he wondered why people had meaning in their life, and he was very kind of flat. And one day, I heard the flatness in his voice, and an idea occurred to me. I said, Heinrich, what if you said that to me in German? And he said it to me in German. I said, what was it like for you to say that in German? And he said, I feel full. And the interesting thing was that he spoke to me. He said it to me. He said it to me using Sie, not du. And previously, he was very familiar with me. And du was the familiar. And when he went to the world of his background, the world he was also living, the world of his vitality, I was now part of that, and I was a Sie. And he felt that vitality. He felt all of a sudden something filled. Now what happened is he left his job, and he moved to Europe. He was also raised in a bilingual family in Europe, and he's now running an inn in Provence. Now this is also an example of how language is part of a life world. We're living in our languages. I also do this when I teach in translation. I often ask, when I do a demonstration, the person to speak to me, not through translation, but in language, in their language. Oh, good. Let me go very quickly, very quickly. I can't do it. I can't do it because it's only 15 minutes and I want to leave time. Let me tell you what I was going to do. I was going to go to intentionality. Now, intentionality is classically intentionality for contact. Intentionality is typically reaching out. And contacting is typically thought of as aggression, which is an aggressere, to move towards, an intentionality towards. Now, I was going to take the Gestalt attitude epoche induction and see whether or not actually that's your experience. I was going to say, I was going to give the example of a typical example of me walking to my office, not hungry, and seeing a donut shop and getting hungry. Experiencing the donut calling out to me. Is my intentionality towards the donut? Is my appetite towards the donut? Or was there something happening in two directions? You see someone who's attractive, you're struck by Cupid's arrow. It's called out. That attraction didn't happen until that person fired that arrow at you. And you can go through everything. We may experience the direction of contacting, but contacting is as much a direction out as a call out. There's a call and a response. In relationship, we're both welcoming and reaching. We're both accepting and reaching. That's relationality. It's not simply an aggressing out. It's an opening. And it's that rhythm that's important. That sometimes is missed when we think of the one-directional qualities of intentionality of contacting, and aggression. Now, in English, it's aggression. It's also been, and it's also been somewhat modified. Now, all I'm saying is not that aggression is useless, but that we need to find other ways to describe this. We need to make room for welcoming, for opening, for receiving. And those are also contactful experiences. They also involve something that is not our typical way of looking at aggression. Now, I am not a fan of contact and withdrawal because we are aware of withdrawing. And where awareness is contacting. Contacting is not my making this. It's also my this. And we lose it when we put it in terms of contact and withdrawal. Now I'm a minority here. I'm a minority. I'm a minority about contacting too, but that's again another theme. But I'm suggesting a different model, a very different model, which is not ego functioning centered, but a whole centered, in which we're all responding to one another in a variety of ways, both this way and this way, both as agents, active agents, and as receiving persons, as people who are responding and people who are responsive. We can't be one. If we're one and not the rhythm of back and forth, there is something to be looked at. Now this isn't saying that there's only relationship and that our work is only relational, because that's ridiculous. Because contacting is also contacting. But we have to notice this. We have to make room for a new paradigm in Gestalt therapy if we're serious about contacting, if we're serious about our shift, if we're serious about the wider world and the responsibility. And I mean responsibility not in taking care of, but our capacity to respond, to be responsive. And in another presentation, I'll talk about something like that. And I'll do it on Sunday, which is called the pathic field. And pathic means to undergo the other. Because it's the undergoing of the other, which is the condition for an ethical response. Now that may be not, you may say, that has nothing to do with the Gestalt therapy. Well, I say, if Gestalt therapy is about human response and contacting, about human contacting, well, come on, if we ignore this, we're just talking about a sliver of human contacting. And you can. And it's not wrong. But I'll say, life world, organism, environment, life world field, existential, meaning making, whole people, one with the other, dialogue, me with you, you with me. Not me alone, not a talking head, a receiving person, a giving person, and a shifting contact boundary. I mean, that's all there is. And when we do the Gestalt epoche, that's what we find. And screw those words, including mine. Experience leads, we follow. And I thank you. Oh, it's 103, isn't that wonderful?
106.
No, it's 103. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. That was when I set the timer. It's 106. Well, I'd love to hear questions and responses and reactions. What I don't want to hear is nothing. Yeah?
Dan, you sound a lot like Buber and Levinas to me when you talk about...
Yeah. Buber and Levinas.
Like this, kind of the receiving part feels like the hollowing out, the inviting, the
Sure.
making a home within yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you say ethical other... and when you say ethical other, it reminds me of the Levinasian call. So are those influences?
Yeah. Levinas more than Buber.
Yeah.
Levinas more. Levinas, and I've also been paying attention to Bernard Waldenfels, who actually, I think, takes the God out of Levinas, which makes it much more palatable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Takes the mystery out of Levinas.
I'm curious that you didn't reference that.
I would if I had more time.
Because that language was quite loud to my
Oh
ears.
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I don't think you're so alone.
Yeah. What?
I don't think you're so alone.
Oh no. That's what I meant. That it is really zeitgeist. It's really here. It's really here. And if Gestalt therapy is going to get out of the shadows, I don't mean shadows. If Gestalt therapy is going to get here, well, this is where we are. This is where the world is. This is the shifting paradigm. That's why the EAGT conferences have been about things like this. All about things like this.
I don't think I've been around enough to
Oh yeah, and it's shifting. And I'm pushing it, no, I'm pushing it, I'm being pushed. Yeah.
Hard to hear you.
Then in the first part of your speech, you stressed the limiting effect of words. What I missed is the broadening.
Yes, the broadening, yes.
Also broad.
Yes. Yes. What I was hoping was, what I was trying to do was, in my talking, use different words for the limiting words. And I think that, first of all, in poetry and in song, we're using words that open. And I'm hoping that by challenging the limiting words, we're finding opening words. Now, when I replace environment with life world, for example, I'm using one limiting word with another. But if that's for the purpose of using life world as kind of like a nutcracker, and we're always going to find words. But we're going to do it together. And we're going to check it out to find new openings.
Now I start wondering if there is a way of making like a combination of poetry and everyday words.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Not so separate.
Yeah, that would be, it would be hard to communicate in the everyday world, because we need the everyday world. We need newspapers so that we everyday people can communicate with each other. This is sort of what Heidegger said, that it's okay to live in the inauthentic world, because it's the way we get from here to there.
Well, in sessions, I think a lot of moments when people just say there's a kind of poetic quality.
Yes,
Although they are not doing art or being poetic.
that's right. That's right. And we have somehow, some of our work is to release that, bring that into awareness.
Yeah, really, really.
Yeah. One of the things Laura Pearls did was ask people to sing it. Yeah. Or one of the things that we can do is listen to the rhythm of the words. Now, can you say that more slowly? Can you say that more quickly? Can you say that softly? Can you?
Well, and then I would like to add to it, it's also like poetic listening.
Yeah.
People are poetic spontaneously, I think.
Yeah.
But you have to hear it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Because it's always a this. Because it's always emergent of the contact boundary. Yeah. I'm a big devotee of the contact boundary. I just think it's understressed. When people talk about the between, I hear contact boundary. And so, yeah. Uh-oh. Let me ask you. Did I overwhelm? You can tell me.
A little bit.
A little bit? Where?
Well, partly your pace for me.
Yeah.
Fast, and too many ideas too quickly. Can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Just your pace for me was too quick and too much introduced. And also, I thought you used the shorthand like it's very familiar to you, but the language is not familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I can see that. I appreciate that.
I was also, have you been reading Goethe?
No.
I have a suspicion that you have similar ideas.
Well, I've been reading people who were influenced by Goethe. Those Germans,
Yeah, well, I read a little bit of his interest in direct experience.
Yeah. I'm aware of sometimes packing too much. And I spent the morning cutting.
I would appreciate getting that in writing so I can...
Yeah. I would be glad to give it to you in writing. If you have a thing, I'll write down my email address. You know, I have a chapter appearing in a handbook in Gestalt Therapy Theory and Practice, which contains some of this. I have some other essays on this. So, you know, I guess it's because I have a lot of thought over these things. I have a lot of practice around these things, and I'm eager to talk to people about it. I have excitement about these things. I want to let you know. I want to engage with you about this. I'm very, very happy to send you what I have. I do online webinars, and I'm very happy to include people in it. I have people in the webinars from around the world, Poland, actually, somebody in Krakow. But I like talking about this. I like bringing people into this, you know, not talking at. So I hope I get communicated some of that, and I'm sorry that I you know, but thanks for that, because God, I need to do that more. Cut more, Dan. More? Bob, you have any reaction? Anything you want to slap me down for? What an expectation.
The masochist said to the sadist, "Hit me." And the sadist said, "No."
The imitation masochist makes the sadist say that.
Thank you, Dan.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.